Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to AMPC's webinar today on this great Thursday on Energy and Environment Grants Helpline. This is an initiative of AMPC under the Sustainability Program area, which Matt Deegan heads up. As part of today, we really encourage questions. So if anyone's got any questions and are new to this platform, please type them in on your toolbar. There's a question section there, and Matt will endeavour to get the Ndevr Environmental team to answer the questions throughout the session. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Matt to introduce the Ndevr team. Thank you.
Thanks, Amanda. So just a quick intro to the webinar and the Ndevr team. So if you're an AMPC member and you want to know what government grants and funding are available to you, then this is the program for you. So the AMPC Grants Helpline is a free service for members with expert information and advice and guidance to help you identify and apply for energy and environment government funding and grants. We've got an excellent program manager for this in the form of Ndevr Environmental, who have had successfully helped businesses apply for $20 million worth of grants in their time. So today we've got Matt Drum, who's the CEO for Ndevr Environmental, and Louise Walsh, who is our New South Wales manager, and Thijs van der Pol, who is a Victorian manager. So I'll hand over to Matt Drum. Thanks, Matt.
Thanks, Matt Deegan. So a little bit very quickly about Ndevr Environmental. We've got a lot of ground to cover in 45 minutes, but we're a consultancy around about 30 specialist consultants across the country, headquartered in Melbourne, offices in Sydney, WA, and Brisbane. We have a team of engineers, environmental scientists, and policy makers and legal specialists. And the work we do is generally around emissions reductions, opportunities, and carbon neutrality and energy efficiency for our clients. Our clients are typically large energy users across all sectors, from mining and resources to manufacturing to red meat processing in this instance, and everything else across the economy. Where an organisation uses a large amount of energy and therefore has large emissions profile. Our vision and mission is to assist businesses to transition to a sustainable future for the earth and its people. So moving forward, Louis, I think you have control of the slides. I'll just introduce at a high level what this program is about and what the drivers are for it. And where we fit in and the value that we're looking to provide the members. So here's our agenda: project overview, grants and opportunities, tips for success, and how to sign up, and questions. We'll have a few points across the webinar for questions, and we're more than happy to take questions offline if they're a bit more detailed. We see this as a really good opportunity a first opportunity to engage with the members and you know, take some more detailed questions offline and start rolling through our process of how we propose to help you guys, which we'll talk to now. So the project overview: what is the helpline all about? So what has become apparent in discussions with Matt Deegan and the AMPC team is that you know, AMPC members have a lot of pressures coming from a lot of different areas, from drought, bushfires, biosecurity, geopolitical shifts, and obviously your everyday issues that you deal with around production and sales and delivery, industrial relations, etc., etc. We're focusing in on the environmental and energy components of this, primarily state, but also some federal grants and programs that are released. And what we've found and what's become apparent is a lot of the state-based energy and environment grants are often only open for a small period of time, and there's an art to grant writing, And we see ourselves as that conduit to work between with AMPC and AMPC members and the different jurisdictions that have grants and programs that are coming out now, or grants and programs that are coming, that we know are coming down the pipeline, and able to get you guys ready. But our overall objective is to help the, we want the AMPC members to get their fair share of state and government funding, okay, to more rapidly advance environment, energy saving, productivity type projects, which are often interlinked, and get the government support to reduce those paybacks and to get more access to capital, and really sort of supercharge some of the environmental and energy type initiatives that we know are important to the business, important to a lot of stakeholders, and over at the end of the day, will increase your productivity, reduce your cost of doing business, and have an impact on the bottom line. Next slide, please, Lou. So why a helpline? The genesis of this, this idea of how we could help members get more access to more funding through more programs. We thought initially that we might develop a web page which we aggregated the different opportunities and started and provided you guys links as users, and try to centralize the information. But what we quickly found, and what we know from our previous experience, is you can very quickly get down a rabbit hole of running from one link to another and ending up with quite a detailed overview and eligibility assessment, and an 18-page application form, and people being so time poor as they are, and typically having more and more activities in their day-to-day duties. What we want to do is give you guys via the one-stop shop. 1-800-2-GRANTS is the 1-800 number where you can call. That'll come directly through to us. Tice will be your initial point of contact there. So that'll give you direct access to us, and the idea is that we do the legwork for you. We've got a database of projects, of programs and grants that we're currently updating. We're speaking to administrators. We know what's coming down the pipeline. So we essentially want to be the arms and legs in that initial process, or that initial aspect of helping you guys find a grant that suits you, save you waiting through many links and pages of information to check your eligibility. The first port of call is a contact to us. We go away and do our research and present you guys with some options, and then work through there. So that's essentially, we want to streamline again, and we keep coming back to this overall objective is to get you guys a bigger chunk of those numerous state and federal, to a lesser extent, but there are some federal schemes out there that can help you guys with implementing capital projects that'll save CapEx, OpEx, and ultimately improve your environmental and sustainability results. Next slide, please, Lou. So the project outcomes, again, we want increased funding for AMPC members. We want to boost the adoption and innovation of technology. And again, we want to improve productivity, profitability, and the sustainability of the industry. And anything we can do to get government support to supercharge or fast track those innovation, adaptation, adoption of innovation and technology, and improvements in product and profitability and sustainability that's coming out of the government coffers in a targeted way, is, we believe, going to be a benefit to the members, rather than everything coming off your own balance sheets and out of your own revenue and cash flow. So we have seen in our experience that, again, we can really supercharge uptake of strong environmental and energy saving initiatives in waste and water, where there's government support of varying types and levels to assist in those project implementations. Next slide, Lou. I think that I'm handing over to you as to essentially how it's going to work. Yep, so I'll hand over to Louise now, who will talk through how the general program is going to work, the relationships we have, the points of contacts we have, and how we want to roll this out to get the maximum uptake from you guys as members, and really meet those outcomes that we've been signed up to deliver again, to get you guys more access to CapEx, supercharged implementation of environmental and energy projects.
Thanks, Matt. So I'm just going to take everyone through the program of how we see it working. So on this slide here, you can see an example project flow of how we want to be interacting with you as the members through the helpline. Initially, we envision there being a member calling the helpline, and we would discuss, through that call, we would discuss the business needs, what your pain points are, if there are any particular projects that are of interest, and how we might be able to help you with through the energy and environment grants. From there, we'll take it offline and we'll undertake some research of what the available funding options are, and if we have the right information, do a bit of an eligibility assessment to understand if the business will be eligible for any available projects or programs. From there, we'll contact you through via email. Potentially, we'll ask for some further information. Otherwise, if we have all of the available information that we need, we can present those funding opportunities and discuss what your options are. Assuming there's a grant application open or grant program open, we would then be able to provide you with support through the application and submission process. Now, of course, this isn't going to be the only project flow. There might be a few different rounds of discussion, eligibility assessments. Once you've registered for the helpline, we will be able to have your contact details and send you updates on new grants as they become available, so that you're not having to proactively look for the available grants all the time. We can do that on behalf of members and send out the ones that are relevant to you. We may also then be able to call you directly if we have an idea of what types of projects you're interested in, and be able to connect the problem with the solution and the funding via the grants. We'll also be having regular meetings with the co-innovation managers within AMPC. And through that, we'll be giving the co-innovation managers updates on the new opportunities and programs and grants that are available on an ongoing basis. That way, co-innovation managers will also be able to call us to discuss options on your behalf, or you can reach out to the co-innovation managers, your local co-innovation manager, to discuss what options might be available. But as Matt said, the end outcome in all these different potential situations will be to increase the AMPC members' share of government funding. So just to touch on what the scope of the service will be, as we've said, it's a helpline. We're hoping to support members, increase the number of applications and the amount of funding, government funding allocated to AMPC members. So what will be included? In addition to having access to direct access to consultants who are aware of the grant programs available, we'll also be able to provide you updates on new grants and funding opportunities, research the best fit grants and provide briefing to members on pros and cons, what the options are within each of the grant opportunities or funding opportunities. Undertake grant eligibility assessments on your behalf. Support with vetting, drafting and reviewing the grant applications, and provide project management services for the application process. There are some exclusions to what we're able to capture under this service. So the detailed project feasibility assessments and project design and project implementation support aren't captured in the helpline service. So that includes, for example, sizing of equipment and collecting of quotes from suppliers. In addition, we were excluded is the site visits and fieldwork. So just to give you a bit of a taste of what the grants and funding opportunities that are typically available are. What is the funding typically for? We've found recently that the covers a range of grants cover a range of opportunities, so feasibility studies for new or innovative technologies, capital funding for new equipment, or metering, monitoring and audits across energy, waste and water programs. Particularly at the moment, as the states progress towards their net zero ambitions, we find that there's a lot in the field of new and innovative technologies and the adaptation of those. And so what do those programs look like? There's a combination of ongoing incentive programs at both the state and federal level, and we'll touch on a few of those a bit later. Limited time offer grants. So many of those at the moment are, excuse me, a support for the manufacturing industry. And that's really where we're hoping to hone in on providing support to members to support members submit those applications in time for those grant opportunities that have a limited window to access. And in some instances, the rebates or discounts are available. How much is funded? The dollar amounts across the different programs vary significantly based on the program outcomes. States might target certain sectors or business sizes, and so those dollar amounts for the grant programs will vary depending on what those program outcomes are. And we have found that co-funding programs are quite common, particularly for the grants, and often a minimum of 50% co-funding is required from the applicants to be able to be eligible for the program. So just to touch on a few of the available programs that are available on an ongoing basis. Many of you may be aware of the state-based energy efficiency schemes in New South Wales and Victoria. So in New South Wales, there is the state-based scheme is called the Energy Saving Scheme, or the ESS. And in Victoria, we have the Victorian Energy Upgrades Program, or the VUP. Both of these are quite similar schemes. They provide financial incentives for both households and businesses to support them become more energy efficient by reducing both electricity and gas use. And it does this by making it cheaper for you to invest in an upgrade project to reduce your energy usage. There's a range of technologies that are available under both of these programs, including lighting, compressor upgrades, motors, pumps and fans, HVAC systems or refrigeration, and a range of other technology types. Across other states, there's also the Emissions Reduction Fund, which is available at a federal level. And the Emissions Reduction Fund is a federal scheme that aims to provide incentives for a range of organisations and individuals to adopt practices that reduce their emissions. There are a range of methods and sectors covered under the Emissions Reduction Fund, and this includes agriculture. So the agriculture methods cover animal effluent management and beef cattle herd management. Industrial energy efficiency projects are also captured under the Emissions Reduction Fund, as well as waste and wastewater projects. Participation in the Emissions Reduction Fund can be quite complex and costly. So under this program, we're proposing to provide members some support in those initial phases of understanding how to access the scheme and whether it's worth pursuing further. Lastly, in Victoria, you may have recently heard of the Energy Innovation Fund. It's a grant that's available at the moment. While it's not likely to be the focus of the types of projects that we see being accessed through the helpline, I did just want to touch on it just to make sure everyone was aware what it covered. So the Energy Innovation Fund is designed to support emerging energy technologies to help transition from pre-commercial to commercially viable energy options. It's a co-funding program, so it does require 50% funding by participants, but just to give you a bit of a sense of the type of projects, it's funding for the program is expected to be in the range of $2 to $20 million, so it is for those larger projects. And it's with the aim of connecting the Victorian region, for the projects to connect to the Victorian region of the national electricity market or the relevant utility network. Some of the eligible projects under this particular fund are energy storage and waste energy or bioenergy projects. But again, it is for those larger range projects that would require that quite significant upfront capital investment. So just to take you through a few case studies of some of the projects that we ourselves have worked on, as well as some others that we're aware of. So MSM Milling is one of our clients that we supported access some funding through an ARENA grant. MSM Milling are a fully integrated oilseed crushing and refining operation based in Manildra. And they engaged us to assess their emissions reduction potential of switching a fuel source from an LPG fuel source to biomass. We researched and considered a few different options that would be relevant to them, including ARENA grants, access to funding through the Clean Energy Finance Corporation's low interest loans. Sorry, just go back a slide. As well as the emissions reduction subsidies that are accessible through the Emissions Reduction Fund. Ultimately, we were able to secure $2.5 million through the ARENA grant available at the time for the installation that had a total cost of $5.4 million. It's resulted in thousands of dollars of cost savings and emissions reductions from the project, and it's also created ongoing creation of carbon credits through the Emissions Reduction Fund that's created an ongoing revenue stream for them. Next, some of you may have been aware of the Victorian Business Recovery Energy Efficiency Fund that was available in Victoria late last year. So we supported Viva Energy, another one of our clients, access funding through the two programs under that particular program, including both capital funding and energy management support. Through the energy management funding program, Viva Energy were approved funding to develop an ISO 50001 accredited energy management system. That was for their Geelong refinery down in Victoria. And in addition to that, they were also able to secure funding for their Newport facility, which involved the installation of more energy efficient and on-demand lighting, as well as upgrade to some old air conditioning systems and the installation of electricity submetering on the site of their pumps. And through that program, they were also able to secure funding for the ongoing support of being able to analyse the electricity consumption through the submetering and access funding to provide recommendations on how to reduce the energy from that. What we found with this grant was that part of this one of the success factors in being successful in accessing the funding was that they highlighted the job creation and the co-benefits associated with the different project aspects. And so that included being a demonstration project for the ISO 50001 framework and really leading in the energy management system framework. Next up was Planex. So these are one of our clients, but an example that we're aware of, again, down in Victoria. So Planex is a manufacturer down in Melbourne who received a grant to co-fund an energy audit. Again, another example of where there was a co-funding requirement. So to access the energy audit, they were required to contribute approximately $13,000 towards the energy audit assessment. But through the energy audit, they were able to identify gas saving opportunities, and they were then able to implement those opportunities through another co-funding program that was supporting the implementation of gas efficiency projects. Through the implementation of that particular project, they were then able to pay back the initial upfront capital cost, the initial upfront cost of the energy audit through the energy savings that they achieved from the project. And they will continue to have those energy savings on an ongoing basis. They also, through the energy assessment, were able to identify some other opportunities that will continue to save them energy and money going forward. What they also found as a bit of a co-benefit of this particular project was that they were able to position themselves as a sustainable business through those improvements that they made through the program. Lastly, we've just to give an example of the implementation under the Emissions Reduction Fund. We have a couple of clients that have access funding under the Emissions Reduction Fund, particularly in the mining and manufacturing sector in Western Australia. While it is available throughout Australia, we've found that businesses in Western Australia in particular are finding it a useful scheme to access. And what we've found for those clients is that in particular the corporate and investor activity has been driving the prices higher in the Australian carbon market. So you can see on the right there, the ACCU price forecast through to 2050. And that's really increasing the prices for those ACCUs, and it's driving emissions reduction activity. So I did just want to pause there before we move on to answer any questions that anyone might have. So Matt Deegan, I might just hand over to you to see if there were any particular questions at this stage.
Thanks, Louise. So a couple of questions that are coming from the SMS. So the first one just relates to the helpline in the hours of operation. So what times during the day would it be open?
Yeah, typically it'll be available business hours, so 9 to 5, but we do have a messaging service that will allow you to leave a message with your name and contact details, and we will then be able to get back to you straight away within the day to respond.
Very good, thanks. Another question, will you help with federal government grants?
Yeah, so the focus of the helpline. Yep, so the focus of the helpline is on the state-based grants, largely because we find that they tend to be coming more frequently and are open for a shorter period of time, but we are able to support with the federal grants as well as part of the program. We don't want to limit the support or limit the accessibility of funding to just the state programs.
Okay.
Probably add to that, Louise, bearing in mind that they fit with that environmental and sustainability and energy remit.
Good. Thanks for that. And just one more before I hand back to you. The initial discussion when someone calls to talk about business, pain points and areas of interest. How long is available for this?
Yeah, how long available to do the call? Yeah, we initially for the initial call, most likely we'll just answer ask some key questions, so that that'll allow us to then go understand what grants are available at that time. I suppose what we don't want to be doing is keep you on the phone while we're doing research or going back to cross-reference against the information that we have. So we just want to keep that initial phone call short and sweet, get the key details that we need to then take it offline and understand what opportunities might be available to that business.
But
great,
we don't
thanks.
If you've got a lot of pain points that you need to get off your chest, it's not like we've got 15 minutes or 5 minutes. It's getting the information that we need, and however long that takes. It's important we get that up front, so then we can go and do go away and do our research in an informed way and come back with solutions that are fit for purpose for you as members. So no time limits, but we see that as probably the entry level or lighter touch component and the first point of contact.
Thanks, Louise and Matt. There's a couple of other ones. Do we leave? I'll leave them to the end, I guess, if you want to keep going.
Yep, sure. So just once we can come back to those, before we did just want to take you through a few initial grant writing tips. So as Matt had said, we've done supported quite a few of our clients access grant funding across a range of both state and federal programs. So through that, we've just identified a few basics that we think will support with being successful in the application for grants. So there's a few essentials that we see. First one, it's probably a bit of an obvious one, but just to establish what do you want the funding for? So it's really about knowing your project and being able to articulate that in the grant application submission. Next is just having a good understanding of how much it will cost and how much do you need. So as I said, there's often requirement for 50% co-funding through the various programs. So what some of the assessors really want to be able to see is that, first of all, that you're meeting that requirement and not requesting more than what the project will actually cost. But secondly, they want to have some comfort that the project will be able to take place if there is that co-funding requirement, that there's funding available from the applicant's perspective, that they will be able to support with that funding. So to do that, we recommend typically to prepare your finances, have an idea of what the different cost components are, and be able to lay that out and make it quite clear in the application what that will look like. The next question is, how will I implement the project? So having a good idea of the plan and design of your project will really support and provide comfort to the assessors again, that they will know what they're funding and what the benefit will be. And they can have some comfort that the funding isn't just going to be provided and that the project won't go ahead. So to be able to have a plan for who your suppliers will be, who will install the equipment, if it's an installation of new equipment. If you're doing a feasibility study, understand the skill sets and the technical knowledge that the supplier will have for that feasibility study. Those sorts of things, again, have that all quite clear and concise in your application form. And lastly, what's the benefit? So as I mentioned earlier, the Viva Energy grant project, we found that it was likely one of the success factors was that it really highlighted some of the co-benefits of the project. And that included, particularly at that time, because it was the nature of the outcomes, the intended outcomes of the funding program was to support job creation. And so the highlighting the jobs that were created through those different projects was part of what's helped that Viva Energy project stand out. Just a few other tips on grant applications that kind of go across the board. So aim to be as clear and concise as possible and avoid acronyms and jargon. Often the assessors may not have the detailed technical knowledge that the applicant might have, so to keep it clear and to the point and without referring to industry specific terms will help it make it easy to understand and assess the application. Providing evidence for the application is really quite important. Oftentimes the application will require this, but even where it doesn't, we find that having things like the supplier quotes already in place, project timelines or project plans, and in some cases a risk management assessment, depending on the nature of what funding is being requested, having those all laid out in time for the application will support with the success. Be explicit in addressing how the funding outcomes will be met. So as I said again, coming back to the Viva Energy example, one of the key outcomes of that funding round was in generating jobs in Victoria. So highlighting how that particular project or what the funding request will address, how that will address the funding outcomes. Provide rationale and describe why the particular option is essential or the most suitable. So in some cases, the assessors will want to see that you've considered potentially other cheaper options or more beneficial options for a particular project. So as an example, if you were looking to get funding for a lighting project, if you were using sort of an older technology or a higher energy consuming technology, they might question whether you've done your full due diligence on the project. And then again, just to reiterate, highlighting those co-benefits. So job creation will continue, I think, to be one of the co-benefits that will demonstrate the success for applications of funding. Emissions reduction, as the different states and territories progress towards their net zero targets, emissions reduction will always be seen as a co-benefit or one of the key benefits in some instances, as well as the demonstration of new and innovative technologies.
Probably one thing I might quickly add,
particularly on that.
Sorry to cut you off. One of the things that government programs like to see is like a multiplier effect. So if they provide money to a certain sector or to a certain technology, quite often there's a requirement to share that knowledge, so they get that multiplier effect of the money that they've spent being shared out amongst the sector or for the technology. So just be aware that there may be commercial in confidence potential implications there, and there may be knowledge sharing components. If you can talk to knowledge sharing components and talk to that multiplier effect, it will strengthen your generally will strengthen your ability to be successful. But at the same time, you need to clearly understand that there may be some commercial in confidence requirements under the grant program that you need to be able to consider and be comfortable that you're happy to meet those.
All right, so just to wrap up, just to highlight how to sign up. So as we said, you might have seen at the top there, the 1-800 number, 1-800-2-GRANTS or 1-800-247-2687. When you call up, that will allow us to capture your business name and contact details and any key areas of interest or pain points that you might have. And then once we have your details, we'll be able to give you alerts on any new or upcoming grants. Also just wanted to highlight that if you have the completed the AMPC benchmarking tool, that we may be requesting permission for results to be provided, and that will again support us understand what your key pain points are, or opportunities are that are available. Right, so happy to pass back to you, Matt, with any other questions.
Thanks, Louise and Matt, Ties. There's some good things there. I really like the grant writing tips that you provided. They're really worthwhile, and we've seen that co-benefits as well can be the difference between identical grant applications where one gets approved and one doesn't. Sometimes it's because of soft benefits where one grant application didn't identify them and the other one did. I think Amanda had an example of that not so long ago where one of her local communities was successful with a grant because of the connections, both professional and social, that it identified through receiving the grant. So those connections and community relationship building co-benefits can be important as well, can't they, with you know, grants for energy and environment. So we've got a couple of questions there, a couple more questions. So I think you may have answered this one already, but I'll just confirm with you, are there standard documentation that need to be prepared in advance, such as financial statements, insurance, etc., that's typically asked for?
Yeah, so there will be those typical requirements, such as the amount of funding and supplier quotes, or project methodology in some instances. In other instances, it will depend on the particular program. They might have specific documents or templates that need to be filled out. So in that Victoria brief grant, for example, they had certain project schedules and risk assessment templates that needed to be filled out, sorry. And in other federal grants previously, they've had, for example, a document from the management of the business supporting that they will be able to co-fund and commit to the project that needs to be submitted alongside the application. But
Thanks,
most typical would be the evidence would be those supplier quotes as a minimum, I would say.
Generally speaking, the rate of funding that you're chasing, the more onerous the requirements are. Sometimes there'll be a requirement to demonstrate in-house or external capability and capacity to deliver the project, and sometimes there might even be a requirement to demonstrate the financial capacity to deliver your component of the funding, if it's a co-funding piece as well. It's probably another couple of things to add, but what we want to stress as part of our work that we'll be doing in that project management and support of the grant writing and application is helping you guys understand exactly what's required, pulling together checklists, helping project manage and really streamline and drive that process for you on an application by application basis.
Right, thanks guys. Another question similar to that one. Do you help with risk assessment and risk mitigants as part of the grant writing?
Yeah, so
yes.
We might be able to support with the drafting of risk assessments. Obviously, there would often be site specific, so we'd be relying on input from the applicant to really drive the identification and assessment of those risks. But in terms of pulling that together is where we could really provide support there.
Yep.
And sorry, Matt, you were going to say something as well?
Yeah, it will depend on what's in place at the organisation too. Some organisations have quite sophisticated risk assessment and risk management procedures and protocols and systems. So in that instance, it's probably a light touch on our behalf. but in other instances there may be a bit of additional work for ourselves to help firm up that component of the application and work with the applicant.
Right. Okay. Thanks, guys. Yep. So there's an approach for that risk. Another question: are grant approvals likely for smaller plants, i.e., we still have annual electricity consumption of 1 gigawatt hours per annum?
Yeah, that might be one that we can take offline to understand what the particular business needs are and what might be relevant for them. So if they wanted to, if that attendee wanted to write into us or give the helpline a call, we'll be able to go through that process of understanding what their needs are and what might be relevant to them.
Okay, but you wouldn't rule out an applicant or an inquiry just because they're a smaller business?
No, not at all.
No.
And often smaller businesses need the most support because they can often be the most time constrained and resource constrained. So yeah, there's no thresholds or limits there. We're here to help every AMPC member.
That's good. Good to hear. I'm sure that'll make the smaller applicants happy to hear. And we only have one more that I've got on my SMS, unless Amanda's got one through the website. But the last one was regarding alerts. What is the method for alerts, SMS, etc.? Question mark.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
most of the alerts will come through emails. Obviously, we're hoping to get some people signed up through the hotline. And then once we've got people's information, we can send out alerts for grants specific to their organisation. So yeah, it'll be through the emails and then also hopefully through the co-innovation members as well.
Oh, that's good, Ty. It's good to hear, because that makes it clear that they should call the 1-800 number first, register, so they can then get alerts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So the more calls you get, actually, the better service it provides, because you'll have more knowledge on who needs your service. Yep.
Yep, exactly.
And that's about it. Anything else there, Matt or Louise or Ty's?
No, I don't think so. We're just really looking forward to engaging with the members. We see it as a two-way process. We really want the members to engage with us. We want to take the pain out of this process. We want to be your arms and legs. We want to, you know, let you guys continue your day jobs, which are obviously very, very busy, and provide the right support at the right time. And again, our mission is to get you guys a greater share of the government funding that's out there. So we want requests coming in. We'll be working closely with the co-innovation managers as well, who'll be talking to the members and directing traffic our way. We will also be reaching out to the members as well to notify that, hey, there's an opportunity for this type of activity in this type of state, and looking to engage wherever and as often as we can. This is only going to be as successful as the traffic coming in and the traffic coming out. So yeah, we're really looking forward to helping as many members as we can, big, small, and everything in between, to get their fair share of government funding.
Thanks, Ndevr team. Really good presentation. I'll hand back to you, Amanda.
Great. Well, thanks everyone, and thank you very much to the Ndevr team. I look forward to hearing of some successful grants going through and being approved. I know I've already mentioned it to a number of the members that I look after down in the south here, so hopefully they'll reach out to you in the near future. Just wanted to put a plug out also for next week's webinar. Next week's webinar is another one that's being led by Matt Deegan in the sustainability program area at AMPC, and that's with ENOSI, looking at renewable electricity core projects and how you might be able to access cheap, clean energy for your business. So registrations for that will start coming out this afternoon. So once again, thank you everyone and enjoy your afternoon.
Thanks for having us, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Bye.